You're like, oh, really good. Like, you don't feel the same way?
No, I have a couple of segments I do during the week, and I always tell you this is one of the highlights of my week. Otherwise, I wouldn't be up at 5. I was up at 5 o'clock this morning.
Those first 10 minutes are you're like, Gil.
But I had to be up early because, that first week you do have to polish up your power ratings.
Yes. That I understand, but it's very enjoyable to go through these lines, and hopefully you, as a bettor, got some insight from it and at least got your juices flowing as you seek to approach Week 2 in the National Football League. Now, for those who are longtime listeners, you know that after guessing lines, we go to story time, and it is time for story time with Chrissy Andrews as he draws on decades of experiences in the state of Nevada. One story more funny than the previous. When you have your book, this is going to be the very first story?
Well, I had a collection of stories without a really a terrific theme as far as the progression of the stories. And the young woman who helped me said, this has to be your opening story. This is going to catch them. And it kind of tells a story of like a young kid. I was 17 at the time, coming to Las Vegas. How can you not want to be a part of this life? And so anyway, I guess we'll just get into it.
Please.
So we're going to introduce a little bit of a cast of characters here. That I know we have a lot of young people listening who may not know who some of these people are, or maybe none of them. But first, my Uncle Jack Franzi, known around Las Vegas. He's a legend here in town, Pittsburgh Jack. And he introduced me to this life that I'm leading. And
he's still with us, Jack.
He's still with us. He's 89 years old. And I'll tell you what, still sharp as can be. I mean, I have lunch with him every week, talk to him a couple times during the week. If I was betting a Super Bowl, I wouldn't dream of betting a Super Bowl without talking to my Uncle Jack first. He's still that sharp. Anyway, he got indicted for bookmaking and interstate.
Anyway, he got indicted for bookmaking. It's the best. Anyway,
I love telling that because when people freak out, you know exactly where they're coming from.
Yeah.
But this is 1970. He got indicted for, and there's a lot more details that will be in the book. About how that came about. But anyway, he beat the rap, as they say, mostly because of the FBI incompetence. They had 18 months worth of taping our phone calls at home and never got it signed properly by the judge. So they had to throw everything out.
It's like signing the wrong scorecard.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So anyway, after he beat it, he says, screw this. We were living in Pittsburgh, our whole family in Pittsburgh. He decided to move to Las Vegas. And obviously a very good move for him and for the rest of my family. My whole family is involved in the gambling business. But my Uncle Jack came out here in 1970. Well, I was only 14 at the time, so we started coming back and forth. And just to let you know about my Uncle Jack, my dad, my real dad, passed away when I was 14. Jack moved out here, but was still a father to me, flying back and forth, which must have been a tremendous strain on him. But just tells you the character of the man. He's really an A1 admirable guy in a million ways, and there's no man on earth I respect more than my Uncle Jack, and I mean that. And a lot of people would say the same thing. Anyway, if those of you who don't know, and it's probably most of you, Pittsburgh was in a depression about that time. The steel industry had folded up. So my Uncle Jack moved out here. Pittsburgh's in this terrible depression. And what he would do, as many guys are known to do in our line of work, you're always looking for value, right, Gil?
Always looking for value
no matter what. He would buy a used Cadillac in Pittsburgh and bring it out to Las Vegas.
Value's value.
The one, they tell you the minute you drive a car off the lot, it loses 30%. Well, where's that 30% go? Well, went in my Uncle Jack's pocket for many years. He'd buy a new Cadillac every year. So this is 1973. So I'm now 17 years old. And my Uncle Jack's son, Zach, we're 4 months apart. So he bought a Cadillac in Pittsburgh, asked Zach and I to drive it to Las Vegas for him. Now, here we are, 17 we're in a white Eldorado.
That's awesome.
Driving across the country. We're 17. He sent us a couple $100 to stay in hotels, motels, and gas money and eat and all that. Must have been a heck of a sight. Anyway, so we get the car in Pittsburgh. My cousin was in the used car business back there. We drive it out to Las Vegas. And the plan was we were going to stay here for a couple of weeks and just kind of enjoy Las Vegas. My uncle lived right off the strip, which back in those days was like the prime area. I said 1973, there was about 150,000 people in the entire valley, included Henderson and
And now there's just over 2 million.
I think there's 2.5 million. Yeah. So just just a total microcosm then of what it is now. So we lived, and it was cool. We got to be in Las Vegas, but the one detriment was we didn't have a car. We brought my Uncle Jack's car, and he had sold his other one. But we would walk down to the strip every day. We stayed in a nice apartment. We had, a nice swimming pool and that sort of thing. So it wasn't all that bad, but we still would have liked to have had a car.
So you drove this car out, and then you had to give it.
We drove this car out. We gave it to my Uncle Jack.
Okay.
And, he was doing his business and stuff. But like I said, wasn't that bad. So after a couple days, we get a call from Sonny Vaccaro.
Jimmy's brother.
Jimmy Vaccaro's brother. Now, for those of you that don't know, and I would recommend you Google Sonny Vaccaro. Sonny Vaccaro, one of the most well-known, most influential people in the world of basketball. College basketball particularly, but pro basketball as well.
And for those who don't like to read, there is a 30 for 30 on him
There's
as well.
a 30 for 30 on Sonny Vaccaro. Sonny signed Michael Jordan for Nike.
Yeah, that says it all.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah. Made Phil Knight a billionaire and probably didn't hurt Michael very much either. So Sonny did very well for himself. So again, this is 1973. Sonny at the time was about 30 years old, I'd say, and making his mark in various things in basketball, among them being an agent, a player's agent. Okay, and he was working out of Las Vegas. He was in L.A. a lot, too. I've known Sonny since I was 12, so at this point I'm 17. I'd known him for about 5 years. He was close with my Uncle Jack. And Sonny calls us. Me and Zach are in the apartment. He calls us. And, Chrissy, I got a car for you and Zachy. You interested?
Of course.
Oh, heck yeah, we're interested. All right, I'll be over in about 10 minutes. Okay. Didn't really think much about it. About 10 minutes later, we get a knock on the door. All right, here's the keys. There's your car. He points out there's this bright orange Buick Electra 225.
Nice.
Now, you might want to Google that. The Buick Electra 225 was Oldsmobile's, or the Buick's answer to the Cadillac Fleetwood Brougham.
I'll show them. We'll make an Electra.
Yeah. One of these huge cars with a hood that never ends. And it, like I said, it's bright orange. I've tried to find that exact color on the internet with cars.
It's very difficult to find.
I would say it's like about the Tennessee Volunteers orange, like that bright orange, kind of like that. Well, I just can imagine what my face looked like. I looked out there, and there's this big orange car, and I just kind of looked at Sonny. He goes, "It's George Gervin's car. He's in Europe for the summer. He asked me to watch it. I got no place to put it, so you and Zach might as well use it." And if you know Jimmy or Sonny, their personalities, Sonny giving me a car like that would be like asking Jimmy, Jimmy, I need $1 to get a Coke out of the vending machine. Oh yeah, God. Here you go. It just meant,
George Gervin, the Iceman.
George Gervin, the Iceman.
Maybe some background for folks.
Here's a little background. Of course, he got famous with his one advertisement. He goes, "Of course I could finger roll.
I could do one thing, and that was the finger roll."
And that was average about 30 a game. Yeah. He's in the top 50 players of all time when they made that team. George Gervin, an absolute one of the top scoring forwards of all time in the NBA.
For the San Antonio Spurs, ABA previously, and if he turns to the side, was so thin that he's almost two-dimensional. You couldn't see him.
I have other George Gervin stories, but I never met George.
So wait, so you first of all, you get this car, you drive cross country, and you're a teenager. How awesome is that?
I'm 17.
You give it to Sonny.
I give it to Jack.
You give it to Jack. Sonny then calls you a couple days later. He's like, "Oh yeah, Zachy, Chrissy, I got a car for you. It's an orange Buick Electra. By the way, it's the Iceman's, George Gervin."
George Gervin's car. And like I said, at the time, if you go back and look, there was a gas crisis going on. Gas went from like 30 cents a gallon to 38 cents a gallon.
Crisis.
So Sonny flips us like $20, which was going to last us for 2 weeks of gas,
There's more to this story.
There's
correct?
more, so we could take a break now.
There's more to this story.
Oh, there's a lot more.
Sonny Vaccaro. and the Iceman, George Gervin, with Chrissy Andrews. What a life you've led, man. Love this. More story time on a numbers game at VSiN on the way. More with Chrissy Andrews here in the middle of story time. So just to review, in case you missed it, Chrissy's a teenager. He drives a car with his cousin Zach across the country, and then
Not just the car, big white Eldorado.
a big white Eldorado, and then 2 days later, once in Vegas, Sonny Vaccaro, no less than Sonny Vaccaro, who you knew for 5 years at that point, says, "Oh yeah, I got a car for you guys, Zachy, Chrissy," and he presents to you a bright orange Buick Electra that happens to belong to George Gervin, the Iceman.
One of the great basketball players of all time. George was just a rookie at the time.
One of the 50 greatest of all time.
One of the 50 greatest. So anyway, we get this car, and we're in our glory. But, we're 17. We quite haven't discovered girls yet, and probably not the Las Vegas girls. We're right up our alley, I would say.
What are you referring to there, Chrissy?
Yeah, well, use your imagination. Our big trip would be to go to the new Wendy's on the west side of town. That was our... But we had, there were days we just drove the car around with the air conditioning on full blast and listening to this Iceman stereo, and we were in heaven. So this goes on for I'd say about 2 weeks. And again, a little bit of backstory here. For those of you who don't know, we assume so much, but Jerry Tarkanian had just been hired at UNLV. Now, Tark, again, had tremendous success at Long Beach State. 2 years in a row.
Prior to UNLV.
Prior to UNLV, 2 years in a row, took that great Sidney Wicks, Curtis Rowe UCLA team to the wire in the NCAA tournament and lost by about a bucket each time.
Sweet 70s names, Curtis Rowe and Sidney Wicks.
Curtis Rowe and Sidney Wicks. They won championships at UCLA, but Tark almost beat them. That's how good a coach he was at little old Long Beach. UNLV hires him to come in here and turn the program around, and people were extremely bullish on Tark coming in here. And I wanted to tell this story when Tark passed away. Jimmy encouraged me not to. He thought that the family might think I was being offensive, which not in any way, shape, or form was I being offensive. The NCAA hated Tark.
Yeah.
Mostly because he was the only honest one out there.
He was the one telling you what he was doing.
Yeah, he told you what he was doing. Yeah. And what Tark would always say, one of his things is, I loved getting transfers because their cars are already paid for. And I'm here to say that's not 100% true. So anyway, we're driving around, and I remember I'm in the apartment, I'm in my Uncle Jack's apartment, and I get a call on telephone, and I hear this voice that I somewhat recognize. Are you Jack's kid? Yeah. All right, this is Jerry Tarkanian. Sonny told me to call you. We need the car.
Oh, man.
I start like hemming and hawing. The Tark didn't want to hear it. Here's the directions. Okay. Yeah. So now I go over to Tark's house. Tark's there. Lois, his wife's there. And a group of very tall gentlemen were there as well.
Some ball players?
That would be my deduction. And I walk in, and, there's all these guys, and they got a pretty big smile on their face. I'm pulling up in George Gervin's car, and Tark says, I don't think he ever called me Chris. I was just Kid. Hey, Kid, here's Jimmy Baker. I know was one of the players, and this guy and that guy. I can't remember all of them. Say hi to Ricky Sobers. Hi,
Ricky Sobers.
He goes, toss Ricky the keys. And Ricky's all smiles. I toss Ricky the keys. And, Ricky, like I said, he's happy as could be. He goes, all right, Kid, you're going to take Ricky's car. Just take it back. Sonny will pick it up. And I look outside. There in the driveway is this total piece of crap. I don't know what it's put together with, with masking tape and duct tape. And I remember just kind of looking at Tark like with that.
Come on, Tark.
You got to be kidding me. Tark puts his hand. Kid, you've been driving George Gervin's car for 2 weeks.
That's right.
You have nothing to complain about.
That's awesome.
I guess you're right, Tark. I really had nothing to complain about. So I was 17 years old.
What a life you've led.
And I've been extremely lucky, and I know there's a lot of people looking at, I don't mean to be name dropping or anything like that. These are just true parts of the story. So when I did write the book, and I included that the young woman who helped me, and she's not a big sports fan, but she told me, you got to open the book with this, because this will stoke everybody's curiosity as to how you got into this, and it really sets the pattern. I grew up, I was 12 years old, I knew Sonny Vaccaro, world renowned. By the way, I love the kid Sonny, because he is world renowned.
Yes,
absolutely. But I tell him in Las Vegas, you're Jimmy Vaccaro's brother.
That's right.
And he loves that, because obviously Jimmy and Sonny very close.
And don't you forget it.
No, Jimmy's a legend himself. And two brothers that I absolutely love. My Uncle Jack, who will be in many of these stories as story time goes on. But I had to throw in the one about Tark. I met Tark just a couple of times over the years. I don't even know if he'd remember the Ricky Sobers story. But, of course, I'll never forget it. And
there's nothing disrespectful to the Tarkanian family with that.
Not at all. But Jimmy thought I shouldn't tell it right away. And I thought it was kind of humorous. And like I said, Tark was the only one telling the truth.
Yeah.
All those guys are,
Their cars are paid for. What a story with Jerry Tarkanian, Sonny Vaccaro, George Gervin.
Yeah. And I never met George to this day.
Ricky Sobers, by the way, for those who don't know. Brent's famous call in that triple overtime game between the Celtics and the Suns in the 1976 NBA Finals. Ricky Sobers was a member, I believe, of the Phoenix Suns at that time.
Ricky had a 10-year career. He averaged, I want to say for his career, averaged about 12 points a game. Now, Ricky was a very legit player.
Oh, yeah.
And Tark's first team, they made some noise at UNLV, and nationally they went on. And again, for those of you young kids who don't know, at Tark's heyday, UNLV basketball was as good as North Carolina or Kentucky or Duke or anybody.
I guess we do have to say that, huh? For those of you who don't know UNLV,
there's a lot. That was what, mid-90s. That's
early 90s.
That's a long time ago, Gil. Probably some of our listeners weren't even born yet.
Yeah, UNLV, of course, winning the national championship, and then
their best team probably did not win the national championship.
Trying to repeat. Duke beats them, and of course, conspiracy theorists to this day wondering if there were any shenanigans. Jimmy says no.
I say no too.
Jimmy was on the podcast telling that story with you last year as well.
Yeah.
So we'll perhaps get to that one day. But story time.
That's the opening chapter of the book. It's with editors right now and publishers, and I don't know when. It takes a long time to get these books out. I don't know when it's coming out, but I think it'll be really good. I think you'll really enjoy it when it does come out.
You're in the book biz now.
Yeah.
It's a whole different game. What an honor. I am honored to have you, Chrissy, and I've told you this every year, but seriously, we always talked about on the podcast, if we could only do this on a bigger platform, and so our dream has come true. Chrissy Andrews, the director of the South Point Hotel Casino, appreciate the guessing lines, really appreciate the stories, and we'll do that each and every week throughout the season.
You got it. Sounds like fun.